Hey everybody, JP here, and today we're going to talk about guitars. Not so much an Andy Wallace thing, although I am doing something that he's kind of associated with. But let me just play it for you first, and then we'll start to dissect. So, we've got three main tracks, and these actually came in as DIs. They were clean DIs, so they needed to either be, amp simmed or reamped. So I chose to reamp them through some of my own amps. I have a high gain model called the Metatron that I used for the hard left and right pair, and then down the middle I used Pasadena Rose, which, first of all, let me give you those. That's the left Metatron by itself. Pair together. And here's the Pasadena in the middle. Pasadena really fills out the middle. I like having a different sounding amp in the middle. And in the case of the Pasadena here, actually, the bandwidth is reduced slightly compared to the Metatrons. You know, the Metatron, being a modern high gain style amp, is very full spectrum, and Pasadena being more of like a JCM 800 on steroids, you know, kind of the old Jose Arredondo style modded Marshall. It's a bit reduced in that regard, and I also set it that way intentionally because the middle already has the kick snare, the vocals, the bass in it. I don't want a huge guitar down the middle. It's kind of the Metallica Black Album thing where James had his Mesa Boogies on the hard left and right, and then he had Bob Rock's modded Marshall down the middle just to fill things out. So I kind of took that same approach because I love that album. I'm also using a very basic room reverb. In fact, let me pre-fade. I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. I am compressing the guitars slightly. I want to gel the guitars together going into the reverb, and then actually I'm flipping the panning on the reverb return in relation to the guitars, so that the hard left guitar is actually in the right side of the reverb, and the hard right guitar is on the left side of the reverb. Give it a little back and forth interplay. So I'm compressing them all, and I'm sending them into this room setting in Valhalla. That's without it. The Waves C4, the Andy Sneap trick. Something about guys named Andy and heavy music. All I'm using this for is for the low mid band and to get rid of that mud when he chugs on it. See, without it, it's a little bloated down in that range. That tightens it up real nicely. And if you've never used a multi-band compressor before, it's differently than using an EQ for this. This only does it when that range is emphasized. So when all that extra low frequency energy is building up there during those chug parts, this just clamps down on them then, rather than EQing them out all the time. I want the chunk there the rest of the time. I just don't want it there when he's palm muting. So the C4 is really perfect for this. I've got that on all three, and I've also got just a little bit of a noise gate on the Metatron, just because it is a high gain amp, but I want to tighten that up a little bit as much as I can. So now, we could look at our buses. I've got a main guitar bus, but I've also got this little parallel submix bus. And what am I doing there? An Andy Wallace favorite. So Andy Wallace is associated with this because he does use PCM42s a lot. I'm not sure if it really did start with him or not, but yeah, he is associated with it for better or worse. And what you do is this PSP, this is version 2 of the PSP plugin. There's a limiter on the input, and you crank the input to the max, and then you set your output appropriately. Here. So without it, and with it, it gives a nice little edge to the sound. And then I'm also using the SSL-E channel just for a little bit of this widener. So it's subtle. If you go full on the widener, it gets, well, I'll just show you. It gets really phasey. I like to do just a little bit of it and blend it back in with the regular track. So that's without it. With it. Without. With. So you can hear it's adding quite a bit. It's giving some edge to things. And that width, it does a cool thing, because I'm not changing the width on the main guitar bus. I'm only changing it. And this was a popular thing to do on the stereo input channels of the old SSL 4000, which had a width control on it as well. On the main bus, I've got the Manly Massive Passive. Let me show you what that's doing. That's without. So I'm only doing two things with that. I'm boosting a little bit of 2.2K, and I'm also boosting a little bit of 820, and that's linked side to side, so it's boosting the whole thing. I'm also low passing at 9K and high passing at 68 Hertz. And the Massive Passive is one of those plugins that just makes a lot of things sound better when you go through it. It's really phenomenal. And then I've got the distressor, but I'm not compressing at all. I'm only using the distressor for distortion 3. So it's at 1:1 ratio. See, little ratty, a little harsh without it. That little bit of distortion really smooths things out. I'd probably be using the Fatso Junior for that if they ever made a native version of the plugin, and I don't have the Apollo system. So one or the other has to happen. Either they do a native Fatso. I would prefer that to the distressor for this, but the distressor still does a fine job of it. So yeah, that's what I'm doing to the guitars on this track. You know, making sure they fit in with the bass is also pretty important. Especially the main bass. Especially for this type of music, I really want the guitar and bass to be working together like one unit. In fact, you know, I think a lot of younger guitarists hear that and think their guitar sound should have all that bass in it by itself, when really it's the bass guitar in a good mix is really holding up all that bottom end. Yeah, I guess that's about it for the guitars on here, but I definitely wanted to show everyone what I'm doing, and hope you learned some stuff from this, because I always learn something new whenever I put together one of these mixes. All right, I'll be back soon. Take care, guys.